Stay with, we do the Third Reich in the morning and then back home. So they'll be back here by 6.
Ah ben il y a celui-là là-bas sinon. Merci.
我们从那条什么这里进，走到这里，然后顺着这个再到。
So you were married already?
Right, exactly.
So I'm not a native English speaker, but don't worry, I do this tour for about 3 years now. There haven't been any complaints so far. So I don't think it's going to start today. And we'll spend all day together, so
Yes.
yeah. And we'll talk about Hitler from his birth to 1939. We'll not talk much about World War II because this would expand the whole tour. I don't know how many hours. But of course we'll talk a little bit 45 and after. And to start the tour with, there's an inscription right here in the aisle, relies to our tour, and let's start right in there, okay? No?
Yes, a bit.
A bit?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's what I'm here for, don't worry.
I need you.
So it's dedicated to the members of the US forces liberating Munich, April 30th, 1945, from the Nazi tyranny. Let's have a closer look at some of the vocabulary. First of all, a liberation. Well, in 1945, of course, it was seen as an occupation. But with all the knowledge about, this is the most important, the Nazi tyranny, a system based on crime, fear, violence to more or less everybody, it was seen as a liberation from the system. And we'll talk about all this. And April 30th, 45, what happened the same day in Berlin?
Hitler killed himself.
But Berlin was surrounded by the Russian troops, whereas here the US troops were getting in. And another very interesting spot, the whole inscription, 1992, so almost 50 years after. And it shows very good that how much difficulties there were in the German society to commemorate, to face these 12 years of German history. And we will talk about this as well, why it took so many years that people would acknowledge this special year, this special part of German history, these dark 12 years, I call it the dark years. And why, does anybody know why it's called the Third Reich?
He wanted to create a third empire.
What,
Hitler wanted to create a third empire.
A third empire, yeah. It's called the Third Empire, the Third Reich, because there was a first. It was called the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. It was founded in 806 and it did last until 1806, exactly 1,000 years. The German Holy Roman Empire of Germany, over the Christianity. So this was off in 1806, then in 1866 they started the second one. This did only last until 1918, end of World War I. So Hitler was dreaming of a third that would last many of these 1,000 years, like the first. That's why it's called the Third Reich.
The previous two were Roman, yes?
The first one was like a Christian-based federation, and they were electing a Kaiser on these 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And then in the second, from 1866 to 1918, the Prussian Kaiser, Prussian in the Berlin area, he was the Kaiser of Germany by that time. It was a federation as well, but a Kaiser on top.
Yeah.
And then Hitler thought to design the third, leading him in the beginning and then later on somebody else, because he was quite sure he will not live forever.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the sun.
Right, English is what?
Empire is right. pictures while I'm talking, because otherwise we'll be delayed by the end of the day. So it's okay. So, who did walk through the city a little bit so far? A little? Yeah. A little. You like it? Well, you can believe me, it didn't look so much different in 1945. We were bombed out as well, like so all the other major cities. Munich is different but Munich was bombed out late. Where did all these aircrafts depart from in World War II? From the British Islands. From the British Islands, yeah. But Munich is located so far south, if you have a look at the map, and by that time the aircraft simply didn't have the fuel capacity to make it back on the British Islands. That's the reason why here, until 1944, almost nothing, just a very few light bombing raids were taking place. But then, with spring '44, the US arriving in southern Italy. And by D-Day in 1944, June, from there it was so much closer getting here. And that's the reason that just in the last 10 months, Munich was bombed out quite heavy. But by that time, it was more or less obvious to the Allied troops that sooner or later, Nazi Germany will be defeated. And so they didn't take care much about buildings, about everything. They simply dropped their bombs at random. And that's the reason that lots of these old historical buildings were bombed out. And by coincidence, the buildings created by the Nazis were not even touched. And we will we will end our tour in front of one of these former Nazi buildings. That's actually the place where in 1938 the Munich Agreement was signed. That's the original building there. And so Munich bombed out. And you remember April 30th the US got in, and we were very lucky because a few days later they put an old man in charge. He used to be mayor of the city until 1933. When the Nazis came to power, he had to resign. Then the US said, you have experience to make the job before, so you'll be in charge again. And this was a very good decision because this old man, he made a wise decision as well. He said, okay, it will take a lot of time, money and effort, but we will recover and rebuild the city as most authentic as possible. And that's why Munich is such a beautiful town again. Looks old, and the buildings are old, but they're all reconstructed, the major part of it. I was growing up here in downtown in the 70s. And I remember gaps where houses were not rebuilt in the 70s. Well, today it's not a big deal, of course, but 70s, so by the 80s more or less it was done. So it took about 40 years to recover the entire city.
City Hall?
The City Hall had bit images as well. And from the tower there on the corner, we could have a straight look down to the train station. About 80% of the I don't get it. What?
By the Germans, by Hitler's people, or was it all by the Allies?
It was by the Allies, by the bombings. Actually, by that time, it was obvious, and so they didn't care. The aim actually was to demoralize the population, to stop supporting the system, but they didn't have any other choice. And we'll talk about that again.
Just destroy the whole country as fast as they could.
To ruin the organizations, everything, infrastructure, so there will be a collapse. So it would speeding up the collapse of the whole system. Well, it's quite busy, so let's go to other places. It calms down now. Everybody made it? Yeah, good. What a good idea to get some suntan on today in the morning. Don't get the German nationality later on, but we'll do it chronological. And let's talk about the parents. His father was a custom officer in the Austrian customs, but he was traveling back and forth very, very often. And he had his apartment here, and he had, by 1937, then his office here. So this is all buildings from like the first half of the 19th century. But while it's such a nice area, beautiful buildings, by 33 and after, they grabbed building after building, and this was the brown quarter in town. So all party administrations and everything. And number 5, a very small building here, a palais. This was just like 50 yards behind us. It's gone. It was bombed out. The brown house was considered the absolutely headquarter of the Nazi Party, because in 1920, when they were writing the party program, it was also written down that Munich will always be the headquarters for the party. But Hitler, spending lots of time in Berlin by 33 and after, in 1934, he decided that Munich will be the capital for art in Germany. So that's why another exhibition building was built right on the edge of the English Garden, House of Art today. And in 1935 he said Munich is the capital of the movement, so that Munich is not forgotten. Everything started here. You're realizing it started exactly here. So he made Munich an important part in the whole system. But they took advantage of the squares and everything to do their things. For example, here the burning of the books, May 33, right on King Square. Then, for example, adjuration of new recruits, 38, right on the square. And the temples, this is quite interesting. You see there's coffins. Hitler did start a tradition. In 1933, he did start a tradition that he would come to Munich every year from November 8th. What was it, November 8th, remember?
That was the beer hall putsch.
The beer hall putsch in 1923. So he was coming down here every single year for that day to do a speech in the beer hall. But the next day they did repeat the march. But what was their destination? The building. They never made it there. So the march actually was a failure. What did they say by 1933 and after? The march to Field Marshal's Hall. That's where they made it. So they made it a success.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's another example how the Nazis were putting things right, just the way they were needing them.
Sure, they had no failures, that they had overcome their failures.
And the coffins. So 12 Nazi comrades were shot on Field Marshal's Hall, 3 were shot on another place, makes 15. 4, 8 makes 16, so there's one person missing. Another example how they were putting things right. On Odeon Square there's a coffee shop, and the waiter was hit by a bullet ricochet. And he was taken there, said he sacrificed for the Nazi system as well. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, they needed heroes.
In 1923, when they're leaving the courthouse in Munich, you would expect they would be ashamed, they would be disappointed. There's a picture, they are proud. And the masses in front of the courthouse, they applaud. Remember, it's a crisis. The population was waiting for something to happen, and even they failed, at least they were regarded, they tried to change. They were considered heroes, once more. Some shade of here. Germany in the very southwest was cut off and taken into French territory. But the League of Nations in 1920 decided, okay, in 15 years, so 1935, the population there is allowed to decide in an election whether to stay in France or to be German nation. And remember, Germany flourishing, economy flourishing.